In April 2018, the South African Montessori Association and its members agreed on fundamental principles that needed to be used and implemented in all Montessori schools who were members of the association. There are many aspects to Montessori education, but we've decided to focus on 6 principles that must be present in any school that calls themselves a Montessori school. The first principle is that of mixed ages in a Montessori classroom that are groups of children who are put together because of where they are developmentally, not according to a single age group. The classes are also non-graded, so the children are simply together because of where they are developmentally, not because they are forced into the box of a grade. Mixed age classes need to be at least 3 years in their groupings, and those groupings correspond to the different planes of development that Maria Montessori identified. So that is 3 to 6-year-olds are grouped together, 6 to 9 years old and 9 to 12 years old are grouped together. Sometimes in Montessori schools, children are grouped together from 6 to 12 years old simply because the numbers in the school are not yet big enough to split the class. And following on from that, we have in middle and high schools, children that are 12 to 15 years old and 15 to 18 years old. The mixed age groups are not divided in ways that are based on achievement levels or normative standards, so not grade specific based on their age, but rather developmental levels. The only plane of development that is not grouped in a 3-year age span is that one from birth to 3 years old. For Montessori schools that cater for infants, their grouping is from around 3 months old to when the child is walking well and confidently, which is somewhere between 12 and 18 months. And then toddler communities are children who are grouped together from somewhere between 12 and 18 months old to around 3 years old. The second principle of an authentic Montessori school is that the children work for extended periods of time where they are not interrupted in their learning. A period during which children can choose their own activities and work undisturbed. Typically, this is 3 hours long. So the children are not interrupted all the time. And Maria Montessori said that the key for real learning was the ability to concentrate deeply on an activity that held meaning for you. And in traditional classrooms, children are interrupted often every 20 or 30 minutes with an enforced change of activity, and that does not allow the child to develop as they need to. The third principle in a Montessori classroom is that there's no use of reward and punishments in a classroom. The children work based on a principle of self-motivation and with the idea of developing self-discipline and self-regulation. So we do not reward the children for doing good work, nor do we punish them for doing bad work. Every human being will work with the intention of doing their very best. So we cannot reward one child for doing something better than another child when the result is simply because of where they are in their development. What we do is introduce the children to the idea of a natural consequence. So if you are practicing your work and a skill like reading, you practice the activities that you need to do in order to become a proficient reader, and you achieve success by being able to read, we don't reward that child with a certificate to say that you can read well. We encourage them to experience the internal feeling of satisfaction and motivation that they have from doing that activity. And the same applies to punishment. We don't punish children for doing their work in a way that is not acceptable to us. We find out why that work has been done like that and respond accordingly. The fourth principle in a Montessori school is that the classroom is a prepared environment, an environment that is set up to cater for that child's specific developmental needs. The prepared environment is one that should support the developmental and pedagogical needs of the children using it. A prepared environment supports the freedom of movement, the freedom of speech, and the freedom of association. In a Montessori classroom, the children don't have set places in which they have to sit every day and for the duration of the day. They are free to mix with their friends, to engage in social activity, and to associate with who they choose to associate. The prepared environment also supports the free choice of activities. The classroom is set up in a way that encourages independence, thinking, problem solving, and freedom. The prepared environment supports the different developmental outcomes or purposes that exist for that particular plane of development. So for children in the 3 to 6 year old age, the prepared environment facilitates a process called normalization. We will discuss normalization in detail in a later video, but the important point now is that the prepared environment is the key to normalization happening. And the prepared environment must be one that includes a full range of Montessori materials that support the child's development at that particular plane. The fifth principle in a Montessori environment is that of the adult. A Montessori adult is one of the key components to making the learning experience for the child successful. And that's not because the adult is active in teaching the child, but rather the adult is active in preparing the environment. The Montessori adult is one that has a presence of respect and patience towards the child, an attitude that allows the child to feel comfortable, loved, and supported. The Montessori adult has the ability to balance the principle of non-intervention and at the same time not abandoning the child in their developmental process. We help the child only as far as they need to be helped, and then we step back to allow the child the ability to develop as they need to. The Montessori adult has a fundamental trust in Montessori principles, methodology, and pedagogical aims. We trust and believe in what we do, and we practice what we preach. The Montessori adult is a role that is primarily an observer, a scientist, and an interpreter of the prepared environment. We do not teach the children in a conventional sense. Our job is to watch carefully how the children respond to the environment, how they interact with it, in a scientific way, an objective way that is not based on our judgment, but rather on what we're seeing in front of us, and then interpreting what we're seeing and making sure that we prepare our classrooms to support the child's developmental needs. Our job is to facilitate the child's process towards normalization, and we need to do everything in our power to encourage the child to get there and follow that journey. The sixth principle that applies to Montessori schools that are members of the South African Montessori Association is that Montessori schools implement the Montessori curriculum. Montessori schools do not use the National Curriculum Statement, nor do we implement CAPS. Montessori schools use a Montessori principle.